Okay, so now we're going to start talking about mood disorders. And I just want to clarify something real quick that this meme here is 100% sarcasm. This is not how you can treat depression. Depression is much more serious than just being down and sad, and you can't just cheer up to fix it. So this is kind of laughing at those people that think that you can just cheer up and just try to be happy, rather than making fun of those with depression. So, mood disorders are when we go into extreme emotional states. And these moods negatively influence a person's physical, perceptual, and cognitive processes. So these moods get far too extreme from normal, and when it's both directions, it can have negative effects on all of these domains. And you can think of mood on a continuum from depression to mania. So depression is the very, very negative end of mood, and then mania is the very, very positive, happy aspect of mood. So here is our normal section of mood, where we all experience happy, we all experience sad, and we all experience contentment, kind of this basic normal feeling. But where it starts to get out of normal is when we get into this mild depression and this elation that's called hypomania. And then if you get past that, that's where you really lose this functionality in your life. So we're first going to talk about depression. This is one of the most common mental disorders in the United States. And it's thought to be caused by a combination of genetics. If you have family members that have a history of depression, it is more likely that you will also have a history of depression, specifically if like your parents have had depression before. Biology, the chemistry of your brain has a large influence on whether you will develop depression or not. Your environment, so if you are in a very stressful situation, if you've experienced trauma, that will influence depression. And psychology, how you perceive what is going on. How do you think about the things that happen to you? That will influence whether you become depressed or not as well. So the big risk factors for depression are a personal or family history of depression, major life changes, trauma, or stress, and certain physical illnesses and or medications. So this one sounds a little bit weird, but if you have a chronic physical illness, this can cause you a lot of stress, and it's chronic pain. So it can be hard to keep your spirits high when you are chronically sick and chronically in pain. And certain medications can bring you down, have harmful side effects. So these can indeed be major influences for depression. And there are many different types of depression. Depression is an umbrella term for many different things. Major depressive disorder is usually what people think of as depression, but there's also persistent depressive disorder, seasonal affective disorder, and psychotic depression. There's others as well, but these are going to be the ones that we are going to cover. So major depressive disorder has some very intense symptoms. This is the main type of depression that people are more aware of. So these symptoms of this include extreme feelings of sadness and hopelessness, fatigue, sleeping either too much or too little, loss of interest in activities, difficult concentrating, feeling worthless or guilty, increase or decrease in appetite. I know it sounds a little weird that it could be an increase or a decrease in either appetite or sleep, but the key here is a major change in either. Some people eat more when they're stressed or sad. Some people eat less when they're stressed or sad. And in really severe cases of depression, there can be suicidal ideations, thoughts of suicide, or even plans to commit suicide. And at least 5 of these symptoms must be present nearly every day for 2 consecutive weeks to qualify as major depressive disorder. But there's also physical symptoms that occur as well as psychological symptoms with depression. These include digestive issues and stomach pain, headaches, and decreased pain sensitivity. When you're depressed, you actually feel pain more. Then there's persistent depressive disorder. This is a more mild version of depression. I mean, it is still depression, so it's still not fun. It's not nearly as intense as major depressive disorder, but it lasts a much longer time than major depressive disorder. Persistent depressive disorder must last at least 2 years, and it usually lasts somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And it is possible to have episodes of major depressive disorder in your persistent depressive disorder period as well. Then there's seasonal affective disorder. This is a depression that occurs during winter months, and what's a really big tell for this type of depression is that it's really predictable. It returns every single year. Every single winter, you start feeling kind of down. You start feeling these symptoms of depression. And why this happens is because you're not getting enough sunlight. The sun has gone away. And we know that the sun does a lot for our mental health. In our sleep cycle, when the sun is out, that signals us to stay awake, and that signals us to create serotonin, which depressed people lack. And when spring or summer returns, usually seasonal affective disorder is alleviated. Then there's psychotic depression. This usually stems from major depressive disorder, and it is a very, very severe form of depression, plus some form of psychosis. And so what I mean by psychosis here is either some sort of delusions or hallucinations. So delusions will be some false or fixed beliefs, some beliefs that maybe people are out to get you, or you can control things with your mind, or that the world is ending. And then hallucinations are seeing or hearing upsetting things that others can't see or hear. And then there's the opposite of depression, which is mania. So this is an extreme elevation of mood. And people say that it feels like being on top of the world, like you can do anything, like you're invincible. It's extreme happiness to the point where it's dysfunctional, where you genuinely think you can do anything and you are invincible. So this causes increased activity, grandiose ideas, which means that you have extremely high self perception. You think that you can do anything, and so you come up with ideas that are so ambitious that it's not possible to do, but you think you can. So you start it, but then usually when you're in a manic episode and you start a project, it will not be finished at all. And then there will be racing thoughts, extremely distractible. People with mania are extremely distractible, and they usually don't need a lot of sleep because they have so much energy in them. And a big feature of mania is increased amount of talking, and when they are talking, it's like pressured speech. So they're really talking like they have to really talk like this, and they're really fast, and they have to go. That's kind of the pressured speech that we're talking about. So mania is also typically accompanied by risky and impulsive decisions. So a really big indicator of mania is maybe that someone spends $10,000 in a day on things they do not need. And then they have grandiose ideas that they are going to completely redo their kitchen in a week. And that's what they spent the $10,000 on, is like painting supplies and construction stuff. But like way too much of it. And this episode of mania must last at least a week in order for it to be considered mania. We all can get a little carried away with ourselves sometimes, but for it actually to be a solid episode of mania that's super dysfunctional, it has to last at least a week. A very, very good example of mania is actually this interview of Charlie Sheen back in 2011. I'm not sure if you guys watched it or remember it, but it was like right after he had gone to the hospital for overdosing and partying way too hard, and so now he's off drugs, but he's acting super crazy, and yeah, just have a look. This is what mania looks like.
He really wanted to prove to you that he is clean now. Yes, good morning again, George, and he claims no drugs right now, but we did talk a lot about his past drug use. Charlie Sheen has never been more candid about it and makes no excuses for it. He also shared with us some of what really happened that night last month when he was rushed to the hospital after a drug-filled night with porn stars. Your anger and your hate, I think, is coming off as erratic to people.
My passion.
Okay, your passion is coming off as erratic to people.
Well, did you borrow my brain for 5 seconds and just be like, dude, can't handle it, unplug this bastard? Yeah, because it fires in a way that is, I don't know, maybe not from this particular terrestrial realm.
I think some of those things that you're putting out there are making people think something's wrong with you.
That has nothing to do with me, really. I mean, they're entitled to, I suppose, interpret stuff as they must.
Some are saying that you're bipolar.
Wow, what does that mean?
I guess that, you're on two ends of the spectrum.
Wow, and then what? What's the cure? Medicine? Make me like them? Not gonna happen. I'm winning. I win here and I win there. Now what? If I'm bipolar, aren't there moments where a guy like crashes at in the corner like, oh my god, it's all my mom's fault? Shut up. Stop. Move forward.
Have you had any celebrities reach out to you to try to help you?
Yeah, radical people like Sean Penn and Mel Gibson and Colin Farrell, and just radical people, and they're not telling me what to do.
Who gave you the best piece of advice?
No, they didn't give me any advice, and within that, there's great advice. It was just love, and so just to see. It's oftentimes says unknown, but occasionally a giant marquee name comes through on your caller ID, and it's like winning.
When was the last time you used?
I use a blender, I use a vacuum cleaner, I use household items. When was the last time I ingested or took drugs?
Yes, when was the last time you took drugs?
Such an AA stupid expression or term. I don't remember. I do not remember.
A week ago, 2 weeks ago,
Maybe a month
2 days ago.
6 weeks. I don't know. It was a couple days before the suits rolled in and said, change it, change everything, we're shutting you down.
Tell me about the last time you took drugs.
The last time I took drugs, I probably took more than anybody could survive.
What are we talking about? How much?
I don't know, man. I was banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll. I have one speed, I have one gear. Go.
How do you survive that?
Because I'm me. Because I'm me. I'm different. I just have a different constitution. I have a different brain. I have a different heart. I have a different, I get tiger blood, man.
You don't worry that you're going to die when you take that many drugs?
Dying's for fools.
But you're only human.
Now, there's certain blends I will not entertain because that's how people go down. I'm too smart to do that. So, I'm sorry for the guys that happened to, but, he should have read the directions before he showed up at the party,
So you actually have a strategy about how you take your drugs?
No, I just have a couple of rules. I don't know if it's a strategy.
You're clean right now.
Sure.
So is this better now? Your life now, clean with your children.
Yeah,
is it better than being on drugs?
It's perfect. Yeah. No, it doesn't compare. They're whole different realities, There's great things about both, but what I'm harnessing now is absolute, focus. It's exciting. It's exciting. I've come back from a place that, people can put labels on it and they can figure all this stuff out. They can try to normalize it, boring, stupid, and it's fine. But for me, it's I've just answered to a higher calling, and it happened in the blink of an eye, and I'm totally excited by it.
Are you worried you're going to relapse?
No.
Why?
Because I'm not going to. Period. The end.
But how do you know?
I blinked and I cured my brain. That's how everybody has the power. It's because everybody, can't is the cancer of happen. Can't is the cancer of happen. I can't do it. The Nike slogan doesn't say just try it. Oh, okay, just try it. No, just do it, man.
But you love to party.
I mean, what's not to love?
How do
Especially when you see how I party, man. It was epic. The run I was on made Sinatra, Flynn, Jagger, Richards, all of them just look like, droopy-eyed, armless children.
When you look back at the last time you used drugs, are you disgusted with yourself, or do you think, how could I have done that?
I'm proud of what I've created. It was radical.
You're proud of that party moment?
Of course. Why wouldn't I be? No,
Why would you be?
Because I expose people to magic. I expose them to something they're never otherwise going to see in their boring, normal lives. And I gave that to them. I may forget about them tomorrow, but they'll live with that memory for the rest of their lives. And that's a gift, man.
One of the women said that she was afraid she might OD. One of the women who was here.
What does that got to do with me?
You're showing them the party.
That's got nothing to do with me. That's all on her. And if she does, I'm sorry.
You say that you like the feeling of being on drugs, and it's
Not
exciting
anymore,
and fun.
Not anymore. It bored the hell out of me after a while. I was like, okay, let's try something else.
How can anyone believe that you will stay clean, given your track record?
I'm not interested in what people believe. I'm interested in what I believe, and I believe in the truth. And that's what rules me.
And Charlie Sheen did end up taking that drug test while we were in his home. He passed the urine test, but also took a more comprehensive blood test that would reveal if even more drugs were taken.
Alright, so that's a really good depiction because he viewed everything in a super duper positive light, and he especially viewed himself as almost more than human. Like, he could survive anything, like he could take more drugs than anyone else, like he couldn't die. So that is a very good depiction of mania. Which brings us to bipolar disorders. So bipolar disorders are when you alternate from an extreme and intense emotional state. And this occurs at very distinct times. And these distinct times are called mood episodes. And it's important to note that in between these mood episodes, these people can have normal emotional states as well. They can have periods of time where they are perfectly normal. They are in that normal range of emotions. However, they will have these episodes of either depression or mania. And there's two different kinds of bipolar. Bipolar 1 is alternating from extremely elevated moods. So this is going from mania to depressive episodes. So extreme mania to severe depression. And then there's bipolar 2, which is alternating between being extremely depressed and then mildly elevated moods. So they're not quite as manic as people as bipolar 2. They don't do quite as many destructive things in their mania episodes, but they do have just as severe depressive episodes. And they tend to stay in the depressive episodes a bit longer than bipolar 1. So you can see this here. People with a major depressive disorder only go down into the D, which is depression. So in the negative, this is our baseline mood here. If we're negative, that's depression. If we're positive, it's mania. So if we're having major depressive disorder, we're just going down depression. This is a normal level of being happy. And then bipolar 2 would be slightly elevated from normal. So these would be our hypomania points. And then this would be our major depression points, which is different from bipolar 1, where it has the major mania episodes and the major depressive episodes. And you can also see it through this graph as the continuum. So here's our baseline and our normal range of emotions. So major depressive disorder, it goes from content and baseline to severe depression. And then bipolar 2 goes from hypomania, this elation, to severe depression. And then bipolar 1 goes the whole spectrum. You can go all full-blown mania to full-blown depression. And then this is our persistent depressive disorder. So it goes from the baseline contentment to the mild depression. So it doesn't get super severe. And this is also where you are when you are in a normal grieving process too. But the difference between grieving and the persistent depressive episodes is that grieving doesn't last more than 2 years. You should be able to work through that within 2 years, at least depending on what it is.